When the line between fiction and reality breaks, who do you believe? Welcome back to Retro Horror School, where we discuss, dissect, and analyze horror from the 1970s through the 2010s. I am Brandy, otherwise known as the Terrorific Lady, and today we are diving in and doing a retrospective of John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, his surreal, terrifying descent into cosmic horror. It's a movie about losing your mind and what happens when stories, the ones we read, the ones we believe, start writing us. By 1994, John Carpenter had already changed horror forever. He defined the slasher landscape with Halloween, changed our paranoia with The Thing, and made social satire cool with They Live. But when In the Mouth of Madness hit theaters, he was making a movie that dissected the nature of reality itself. Now, from the start, remember, John Carpenter, he was a movie kid. He grew up on westerns and was obsessed with westerns. And he was also obsessed with 1950s sci-fi like The Thing from Another World and Forbidden Planet. And before high school, he was already making shorts on 8mm film. Fast forward a few decades later, and he's built a legacy as a filmmaker, composer, editor, and genre-bending icon. But with In the Mouth of Madness, John Carpenter faced a challenge. How do you make reading and writing terrifying on screen? He tackled it by collapsing the border between fiction and reality, and the result is one of the most personal and complex films of his career. Carpenter himself once said, "It's not really a satirical film, but it's based on the idea that Sutter Kane is being told what to write by these creatures from the beyond. People read this stuff, become possessed, paranoid schizophrenics, and run around killing people with axes. It's a take on that ridiculous premise that TV and books can create killers." That line sums up everything about this movie. It's creepiness, it's dashes of humor, it's self-awareness, and also it's bite. Now, this plot starts off simple and straightforward, which is John Carpenter's signature, but quickly veers and turns and messes with your head. In the Mouth of Madness opens with Sam Neill as John Trent, an insurance investigator who really doesn't believe in anything until he's asked to find missing horror author Sutter Kane. Kane's books are so powerful, they're driving readers bananas. Bananas. Trent follows clues that lead to the town of Hobbs End, a town that's not really supposed to exist, except it does. Kane's editor, Linda Stiles, joins John Trent in this quest to find Sutter Kane. And what starts as a routine job, a let's find the author job, a Where's Waldo kind of thing, turns into a reality-bending nightmare. Reality starts glitching. Linda starts seeing things that shouldn't be possible. The sky folding in on itself. The same cyclist appearing twice, once as a young boy and again as an old man. The same cyclist. Yes, this movie made bikes creepy. By the time they reach Hobbs End, they are trapped in Kane's world. John Trent keeps insisting that this is all fake, this is a publicity stunt, but Linda knows better because the story has already been written. Sutter Kane finally appears and drops a revelation. The more people believe in his books, the more real the monsters become. His fiction is shaping reality and consuming it at the same time. By the time John realizes he is part of the story, it's already too late. Carpenter made this film in 1994, which is the final piece of the unofficial Apocalypse trilogy, which also consists of the films The Thing and Prince of Darkness. This movie was made just after the Cold War ended, when everyone was like, whoo, we don't have to live through any more disastrous events. Ha. But instead of peace, here's what came next. Confusion, new ideologies, and creeping religious fundamentalism. Carpenter saw it, the rise of authoritarianism, the craving for new truths, new ways of looking at things, and he shaped it and filtered it through the lens of horror. Where others saw a triumphant end of history, John Carpenter saw the exact opposite. A chaotic return of ancient gods, rewriting the whole of reality while the world itself collapses into madness. It's one of his most politically loaded films besides They Live. It is a reflection of media saturation, cult mentality, and how easy it is for fiction to replace fact. It is a movie that is more relevant than ever, especially today. H.P. Lovecraft's fingerprints are all over this movie, from the old ones, the old gods, to the idea that human sanity is fragile and meaningless against cosmic forces, and in the grand scheme of things, we don't matter, not one bit. Carpenter borrows Lovecraft, yes, but he also updates him. Instead of forbidden and ancient tomes, it is mass market paperbacks. Instead of ancient gods, it's a horror writer. The apocalypse itself is summoned by cultists in the form of his devoted readers. Kane's books literally alter the universe because so many people believe in them. And that's what makes In the Mouth of Madness so far ahead of its time. That one line,
God's not supposed to be a hack horror writer,
might be the boldest statement in John Carpenter's filmography. It's about how influence, worship, and media can reshape the world for better or worse. Think about it. This movie dropped decades before Photoshop, decades before deepfakes, decades before mass misinformation. And yet Carpenter was already asking, if everyone believes a lie, does it stop being a lie? In the Mouth of Madness had a long, strange path to the screen. Michael DeLuca wrote the script and initially offered it to John Carpenter, who passed on the project. It went through multiple directors, Tony Randall, Mary Lambert, before Carpenter circled back around to it and finally signed on to the project in 1992 while he was filming Body Bags. Shot over the course of 3 months from August to October of 1993 in Toronto, In the Mouth of Madness was Carpenter's first movie outside of the United States since The Thing. And as Sandy King Carpenter later said, shooting in Canada wasn't just about the look, it was about outsmarting New Line Cinema's penny pinching. New Line had never done a union movie and were very pro-union. They thought they could save money in Canada, not realizing all of Canada was unionized. Budget cuts hit this film hard. The initial budget, I believe, was $15 million, and it kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking till it was around $8 million. The original finale, where the entire town of Hobbs End was supposed to be sucked into a book, was scrapped. The whole thing was already storyboarded, which is a bummer. Greg Nicotero, who worked on some of the special effects for In the Mouth of Madness, remembered being at the meeting where Carpenter was told, we don't have the money for that. And that's where Sutter Kane tearing himself into the background, that's what replaced the initial finale. Carpenter adapted, he leaned into tension and atmosphere instead of spectacle, and it paid off. He reunited with cinematographer Gary Keeby and brought in K&B Effects for practical monsters. Nicotero described their biggest creation as a Thanksgiving Day parade float of monsters, an 18-foot wall of gnashing teeth, tentacles, and limbs. For the score, Carpenter teamed up with Jim Lang and Dave Davies from the band The Kinks, channeling a Metallica-inspired type vibe when Metallica themselves were not available. That opening riff that you hear in the opening credits, that is pure Carpenter musical energy. When In the Mouth of Madness hit theaters in early 1994, it wasn't an explosion. It, like most John Carpenter movies, simmered and didn't do all too well at the box office financially. The budget was $8 million, The movie only made 9 million. Audiences were confused on this movie and critics were split. It holds a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic clocks it at about a 53 out of 100, mixed or average. Roger Ebert gave it 2 out of 4 stars, saying that it had an intriguing premise but wasted it with hackneyed jump scares and gore. Gene Siskel agreed. Same score. James Berardinelli wrote that the movie comes close to doing something interesting but gets cold feet, calling it confusing, weird, and not very involving. Lisa Schwartzbaum from Entertainment Weekly gave the movie an average grade of C, calling it bloatedly self-indulgent, but admitting that there were some wicked funny moments. Not everyone dismissed it. Keith Thomas of the Los Angeles Times praised it as a thinking person's horror picture that dares to be as cerebral as it is visceral. John Hartle from the Seattle Times called it a stylized collection of well-timed shockers, and the Chicago Reader labeled it a must-see. Chris Duckman, movie critic and director of the recently released Shelby Oaks, gave the film an A, praising its originality, ambition, and the way Carpenter played with narrative form. And French film magazine Cahiers du Cinéma even listed it as one of their top 10 films in 1995. So, American audiences didn't get it at the time, but I guess European audiences did. Like so many of John Carpenter's films, it didn't get its just desserts until many years later. Julie Carmen, who played Linda Stiles, said that people didn't know quite what to make of it. They were used to more formula and this broke the mold. Sandy King Carpenter later revealed that In the Mouth of Madness actually performed very well in Europe, but the studio hid that info probably to avoid paying bonuses. She said, "You always find out you've made a classic years later. You make art to communicate, and when more people see it and love it, that's wonderful." Dave Davies said it best. "It's spooky and creepy, and it's relevant today. It was John going into a new realm." And Greg Nicotero sums up Carpenter's legacy perfectly. John didn't set out to be a horror director. He set out to be a director. That's why his movies resonate. And Sandy King Carpenter closed it beautifully. Horror is an allegorical medium. You can say a lot about the world through it, and if you could fuck up people a little while you're doing it, it's great. That's the Carpenter philosophy in a nutshell. Every John Carpenter movie carries his imprint, his DNA, and In the Mouth of Madness might be the purest distillation of it. You've got that isolation, both physical and psychological. Just like in The Thing, John Trent is trapped in an environment that he can't trust. Only this time the enemy isn't hiding in the ice, it is hiding inside reality itself. Then there's paranoia and suspicion, which Carpenter threads through The Thing. Yes, but also through Village of the Damned, Prince of Darkness, and They Live. Here it's taken to the extreme because John Trent can't even trust his own mind. It's a movie that screams classic Carpenter but shows him veering off into full-blown existential horror. If The Thing is about losing your humanity and who you are as a person, and if Prince of Darkness is about losing your faith, then In the Mouth of Madness is about losing reality. It's the ultimate Carpenter nightmare, being trapped in a story that no longer belongs to you. And that's the most Carpenter thing about this movie. Control. Losing control over yourself, like in The Thing. And in this movie, the nature of the creator versus the created. John Carpenter, he is Sutter Kane in a way, except less evil. He shapes what we see, and we have to decide what's real, and he watches us fall apart, trying to make sense of it, and is probably laughing. Probably. Oh, most definitely. In the Mouth of Madness feels both like classic Carpenter and yet something belong him, almost a little bit of an outlier. It's Lovecraftian horror through and through, bleak, cosmic, and totally helpless, but also very self-aware. The isolation of John Trent, the paranoia, The blurred lines and edges of reality. Those are some Carpenter staples, but in the end, he turns the camera on us, asking whether we're any different from those characters who lose their mind and go bananas from reading Sutter Kane's books. It's about the end of the world, it's about the end of reason. And honestly, I think it's one of the boldest, smartest horror movies of the 1990s. One that deserves to sit right beside The Thing and Prince of Darkness as the third chapter in the Apocalypse trilogy. Thank you so much for watching this retrospective on In the Mouth of Madness. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know if you think In the Mouth of Madness is one of John Carpenter's most underrated movies. And if you've not had a chance to catch any of the other retrospectives or supplemental videos that went along with them, rewind back and check those bad boys out. Class is dismissed, everybody, for now. But I'll see you next time. And read some Sutter Kane while you're at it. Bye!